Dr. Holmes is joining us via phone for this meeting. If I can please have a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move that we convene an executive session for the purpose of student appeals, a litigation update, a grievance.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
Thank you. I have a question about, I'm concerned that discussing the grievance would not comply with policy BEC for executive sessions, and that it should not be discussed. It doesn't fall in line with individual student personnel actions, staff personnel actions, discussion of negotiations, acquisitions of property, receipt of legal advice, security, investigation of criminal misconduct. To me, it's not listed on there, so I'm concerned that that should not be discussed during executive session.
Ms. Agostini, we discussed it with legal counsel, and it is a viable issue for executive session. Do I have any other discussion? With no further discussion, we'll take the vote. Is everyone logged in? We'll take the vote electronically.
Mine is the affirmative, Mr. Manning.
I'm sorry, Dr. Holmes. Can you say that again? It wasn't very clear.
Affirmative for me, Mr. Manning.
Affirmative. Okay, thank you. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. We'll now convene into executive session. All right, I'd like to reconvene the February 22nd, 2022 regularly scheduled board meeting for the Richland 2 Board of Trustees. If I can have a motion for the end of executive session.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I move that we adjourned executive session at 6:33 p.m. and reconvene into our general session.
Thank you. Motion made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion? For the record, Dr. Holmes apologizes for not being here in person, but she is here via phone. And as is practice for us, when our chair is not here in person, we pass the baton, so to speak, or the gavel to the vice chair to run the meetings. So at this time, we'll take the vote on the motion that's put before us. And the motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to the inspirational moment, Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Tonight's student-led inspirational moment will be coming from none other than Richland Northeast High School. The Palmetto Center for the Arts is the high school visual and performing arts magnet for Richland School District 2. PCA is a nationally recognized program and the recipient of the John F. Kennedy Center's Creative Ticket Award for Outstanding Achievement in Arts Education. The magnet program includes dance, music, theater, and visual arts. The Palmetto Center for the Arts is recognized as an ABC lab school. This year, PCA proudly celebrates 20 years of excellence in the arts. Joining us this evening is PCA Theater with the cast of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, presenting My New Philosophy under the direction of Indira Curitan Cummings, affectionately known as Mrs. CC, who is also the director of PCA. Without further ado, you have the floor.
Oh yeah, that's what you think. Oh yeah, that's what you think. Oh yeah, that's what you think. Oh yeah, that's what you think.
What?
That's my new philosophy. Oh yeah, that's what you think.
But why are you telling me?
What?
Why are you telling me?
Why are you telling me? I like it. That's a good philosophy. Why are you telling me? Why are you telling me? Why are you telling me? My new philosophy. The teacher gave a D on last week's homework. She said, Miss Sally Brown, your grades are going down. I could have told her
Your new philosophy.
my new philosophy. Miss B, I'm she. Look, see. A D, a D. Well, why are you telling me? And that's my new philosophy.
That's your new philosophy.
Why are you telling me? My new philosophy.
That's great, Sally, but I've got to go practice Chopin's Nocturne and B flat minor.
No. I like it. No. That's a good philosophy. No. No. No.
That's your new philosophy, huh?
Yes. I mean, no. Just like a busy bee, each new philosophy can fly from tree to tree and keep me moving. When life's a dizzy maze on alternating days, I choose a different phrase.
Your new philosophy.
My new philosophy.
Sally, some philosophies are simple. Man does not live by bread alone. Some philosophies are clear.
Leave your message at the sound of the tone.
Some philosophies pick and choose, deciding what goes in it. Some take a lot of time.
Mine take a minute.
But Sally, anything that only takes a minute can be very lasting. For instance, Beethoven took over 2 years to complete his brilliant Ninth Symphony.
No,
I can't stand it.
I can't stand it. I like it. It's like a guarantee. My new philosophy. And things are sure to be a whole lot brighter. Oh yeah? That's what you think. Why are you telling me? No, I can't stand it. Now life is free and easy. Much more philosophy, see, with my brand new. You know, someone has said that we should live each day as if it were the last day of our lives. Ah! This is the last day! This is it! I only have 24 hours left! Help me! Help me! This is the last day! Ah! Clearly, some philosophies aren't for all people. And that's my new philosophy!
Thank you very much, students, just for the sheer enjoyment of it. Why don't you come up and take another bow? Just because you can. And you deserve it. Take a bow. Another one. Awesome. Awesome. Yes. One of the things our board chair said that she wanted to see this year during Inspirational Moment was students. Student talent. There's so much talent in the district, and that was an absolute treat tonight. I know many of us in the room, I'm dating myself, grew up with Charles Schultz and Peanuts. So, yes, that was a little taste of home. Thank you so much, students, for that. At this time, if you would all please stand and join me in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you. That was great student presentation. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Ms. Mackey, and thank you to PCA and all the wonderful work that our students do in that program. We will now move on to approval of the agenda. If I can please have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
thank you. I move to remove item 8.2 grievance and approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ms. Agostini to approve the motion minus item 8.2. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McFadden. Is there any discussion?
No, that was Dr. Scott.
Oh, I apologize. Seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini?
can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not hearing through the speakers very well either, but I'm assuming that that's just us.
In the audience here? Because I'm not hearing it through. Okay. Yeah, it's the reason I would like to honor the request of the grievant and have an in-person hearing. So I would like to postpone that until the grievant can be here at our next meeting on March 8th, 2022.
Okay. And Ms. Agostini, that's fine, but if we remove that item, we can't even have the vote on whether to hear that in person or not. I just want to make sure you're clear on what you're asking for. If we remove that item, the board cannot take action on that item to ask to have that grievance heard in person.
All right, so to be clear then, we have to vote on whether the board wants to hear it or not?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, then I will withdraw my motion.
Okay, so you withdraw your motion.
Yes.
Okay, can I have another motion, please?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey?
I move to approve the February 22nd, 2022 regular board meeting agenda as presented.
All right, the motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by, was that Ms. McFadden? Dr. Scott, I'm sorry, I can't. For some reason, I'm not getting the same feedback. So seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there any discussion? All right, if we can take the vote. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no to approve the agenda. We will now move on to the consent agenda. If I can, oh, sorry, special recognitions. I apologize. Ms. Ruth, or is that Dr. Davis? Ms. Ruth.
Just a second. Tonight, I have the pleasure of doing 2 special recognitions. Before we get to our National Board Certified Teachers, I want to ask Dr. Scott to please stand, and we'll just do the presentation there. Mr. Manning's going to come forward, and my assistant tonight, Mr. Anderson, is going to take the photo. Back in January, Dr. Davis mentioned as part of our celebration of the School Board Appreciation Month that Dr. Scott reached the 10-year milestone of serving as a school board member. Tonight, Mr. Manning has presented her a certificate, and inside the certificate, Dr. Scott, is your pin, and that's from the South Carolina School Boards Association along with a letter. Dr. Scott was first elected to the school board in 2012 and was reelected in 2016 and 2020. A retired educator, Dr. Scott worked as a teacher, an administrator, and principal. During her time on the Richland 2 School Board, she has completed all 6 levels of the training by the School Board Association known as the School Board Association Boardmanship Institute. Dr. Scott, we thank you for your service and congratulations on reaching yet another milestone in your service as an educator. Congratulations. And now I get to introduce our newest class of National Board Certified Teachers, as well as the renewals. And I'm just going to wave to the camera because I hope most of them are watching tonight. We let them know they're going to be recognized, and we have their photographs like we do with Teacher of the Year. So we will begin. So we have 3 teachers in Richland 2 showed their deep commitment to students and the teaching profession by earning National Board for Professional Teaching Standards certification, which is recognized as the gold standard in teaching certification. 18 additional teachers renewed their national board certification, and the renewals range from 5 to 10 years. While certification is a rewarding professional development experience for teachers, there is also some very tangible outcomes. These teachers will receive a $5,000 annually from the district, and an additional $5,000 from the state for the life of their certificate. With these newly certified teachers, Richland 2 employs 323 teachers with the distinction of earning national board certification. So let's meet our first-time national boards teachers, certified teachers. Shelley Franco from Dent Middle School. Isabel Ramos from Bookman Road Elementary School. And Christina Stout from Jackson Creek Elementary. Let's give a round of applause to our newly certified. Now for our educators who renewed their national board certification. Jonathan Abney, Windsor Elementary. Joan Carter Morgan, Pontiac Elementary. I don't know why I'm turning around looking, I can see right here. Josh Drews at Spring Valley High School. Dr. Jean Green at Ridgeview High School. Stacy Brown Higgins from Forest Lake Elementary NASA Explorer School. Excuse me. Kelly Rembert, who is at our R2I2 Student Innovation Center. Shayla Hicks Stevens from Dent Middle. Heather Alexander from Pontiac Elementary. Thank you. I made the mistake of having a bite of peanuts before the meeting. I do apologize. Heather Alexander, Pontiac Elementary. Jason Ashley from North Springs Elementary. Angela Brazil from Muller Road Middle. Elizabeth Dew, Summit Parkway Middle. Rebecca Garbett from Summit Parkway Middle. Amanda Goodwin from Westwood High School. Wendy Harris Young from Killian Elementary. Jennifer McClinton from Rice Creek Elementary. Dr. Yolanda Smith Charleston from Richland Northeast High. Makeshia Butler Sumter from Dent Middle. And Lisa Wiley from Summit Parkway Middle. Congratulations to our renewed certified teachers. That concludes special recognitions for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. I think we all as board members appreciate the continued effort with our teachers and their national board certification to show that we do in fact have premier educators that are here for our students every day. So thank you to the hard work that it took for those teachers to attain that level, and for the district and board for honoring the additional pay and the efforts that we put towards those teachers. All right, next we will move on to the consent agenda. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the consent agenda for the February 22nd, 2022 regular board meeting.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Agostini. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. And the motion passes 7 yes, 0 no. We will now move on to public participation. I would like to remind folks that our policy does not allow for gossip, defamatory words, or abusive and vulgar language, expressions of personal complaints about individual school personnel or any other person connected with the school system. In my words, if we could have decorum. I would ask Ms. Mary Livermore to please come forward.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can we remind our public participants that the board does not respond?
Absolutely, yes. The board does not respond to public participants. So please don't feel that we're being rude. That's our policy and practice.
And that administration would respond if it's applicable to them, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we have a practice that administration does respond as appropriate. Thank you, Miss. That was a lot. I'm sorry, Miss Livermore. Go ahead.
That's okay. Good
Yeah.
evening. Thank you all for serving on the board. I know it's a hard job. I wrote something out that I put a lot of work to, and then I decided to speak from my heart. Someone said, a good friend said, just speak from your heart. I have a lot on my mind. So I first want to say that I know that there was a situation with Gus, and I just want to say that I had met him at the board meeting myself. He came up to me and said hello. And I think that's important to know. And I also want to say that I know that we all, I'm just very disappointed with the way things have been going in this district. I'm disappointed with the way a lot of things have been going. I know we all say and do things that just aren't right sometimes, and everybody deserves grace, but I can tell you that if I yelled at a child, I certainly would go and apologize and not turn it around. Or I don't know what happened that night. I wasn't here, but I think that children deserve an apology if that is the case and that's what happened, and I don't know. But second of all, I had listened to the board meeting last time and I was so disappointed in what was going on. You know, we're one nation under God. We are not acting like it. We are divided. We're not supposed to be divided. There's so much going on in the world. Children, I mean, I sat for 9 years and watched children die from cancer. And do you know what? If any of you would sit there and watch that, this stuff is all ridiculous. It's ridiculous the way we're running, the way we're just, this is crazy. It's all over in every district. And you know, when I hear things to treat people different based on color of skin, that's ridiculous. My son was homesick for so many years, and he had a wonderful African-American man teach him. And he is so special to me and dear to me in my heart. And when I hear to treat kids different in the school system, I had a friend who left because she went to a meeting and was told to treat kids based on skin color a certain way, and that isn't right. And I'm just so disappointed. I don't know what is going on. We should all be ashamed. Our children are the one who are suffering, and that's what's in my heart. I don't want to sit here and fight with everybody. I know people are here to start fights and argue. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to say it needs to stop. It needs to stop. These children deserve better. We are adults, and we're responsible for the children in this country. And we need to stand up and start treating them, and we need to treat each other with respect and kindness and love. We need to bring God back in the school. That's what our children need. They need counselors.
Ms. Livermore, thank you. I apologize, but your time is up. Next, we'll have to the podium Mr. Joe Trapp.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak a moment. The reason I'm here tonight is because I noticed on the agenda that there was 8.2 on the agenda is a entitled grievance, which I think is about Mr. Phil or Mr. Gus.
Excuse me,
Phil
sir. We can't name names like that, please, Mr. Trapp.
All right. I will refer to him as the first man in the story then, because the school district released this statement on January 27th, which is full of inaccuracies. I was here on January 25th, when the incident took place in the back of the room between a lady that I did not know and the individual that is on the agenda tonight. I want to just briefly tell you what I saw, because I'm a little concerned that no one has asked me what I saw, and I was the closest person in the room to each of these individuals. I was sitting directly behind the lady in question, and I was the first person in the room that night. I sat down, and the young man that came with me sat to my right. At some point in time, this lady came in and sat down in front of us. I did not know who she was until much later. The first individual, the first man in this story, he comes in and is talking to us. He's standing between me and her. Another individual comes in and engages us in conversation as well. At some point in time, the first individual turns because the second individual has began to dominate the conversation. He walks up toward the lady. I don't know what he says to her because I'm listening to the second individual. At some point, I notice that their voices become elevated and that they become loud. I don't know what either one of them is saying. I don't hear very good anyway. Security came over and asked the gentleman to step back away from the area and to sit down. At that point, the lady who is standing at this point is still continuing to talk to him and security. The young man sitting next to me turns to me and says to me, "Such childish behavior." I don't know exactly who he was referring to, but I just witnessed two adults behave in a way that I thought it didn't need to. At that point, this lady began to yell at this young man, this 14-year-old student. I thought she was very loud and rude, but she was just another person I didn't know in the room, and I didn't think much of it. The young man said something else that did not sit well with her, and she continued to yell at him. The first man was taken out of the room and never spoke to her again, never had a chance to speak to her again, which is not what the school district statement says. He was later taken out of the building and has been put on trespass notice. I just want to make sure the board knew that he did not do the things that is reported in this release. And if anybody would like to interview me, I would appreciate it. As a witness, I think it would be appropriate for me to be able to tell you what I saw and take more than 3 minutes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And just for the record, just to note that statements were made on all sides, and the Sheriff's Department collected those statements. So we have those on records through that. Ms. Glowitsky, Monica.
Hello there. I'm a child of God, a mother, a wife, a daughter, a community volunteer, a Blythewood resident, a supporter of free enterprise, and a diehard Stiller fan. Don't hold that against me. But for some reason, unexplicable reason, I've been painted into a very small box by members of this body and by folks in the audience. I've been painted into a box because people have portrayed me and others who have spoke at this meeting as part of a small movement of disruptors, of part of a national movement with an agenda. Well, I'm only speaking for myself because I can't speak for everybody else. I do have an agenda, and I'll be very, very clear about it. My agenda is accountability, stability, and transparency of our elected officials who serve this district. You may remember the very first time I came and I spoke before you a couple months ago. And the reason I came and spoke before you is because I was watching meetings online because I wanted to determine my daughter's educational journey. And after watching the meetings, I said, I can't send a child to this school district. The way that the adults who were leading the school district were acting, I could not in good faith do that. So I started to attend these meetings, and I met folks, I met parents, and I met concerned residents who I had things in common with. There was a gentleman there who was referred to earlier that I grew fond of because he is a Robert's Rules of Order geek just like me. And he was trying to hold the board accountable on numerous occasions, and I appreciated that because I am also a Robert's Rules of Order geek. Since I started coming to these meetings, I've had parents reach out to me. I'm a private citizen. I'm a nobody. You are elected officials. And I told them I'm only a private citizen, but I can amplify your voices by coming to this meeting and speaking. I'm speaking for the mom. I'm speaking for the mom, whose daughter cries every morning because she's afraid about being bullied in school. I'm speaking for the grandmom whose grandson has to eat sitting on the floor of a cafeteria because it is so overcrowded. These folks fear speaking out because they are afraid of being painted into a small box. To the parents who are watching, your voice is needed. Your voice is welcome. Your concerns should be addressed. The buck stops with the school board. You are the end of the chain of command. Hold yourselves accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just ask that if parents or students are aware of issues of bullying or other concerns, that they please go to their administration so that we can address those. That is not something that we tolerate, but if we're unaware, we cannot address them. Mr. Larry Smalls.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's a pleasure to be here. I know you miss me. Anyway, the reason why I'm standing before you tonight is regarding the administrative rule ADD-R requiring masks indoors. Recently, my daughter was being dismissed from school, and upon exiting the building, awaiting to be picked up by my wife, she then positioned her mask under her chin. Immediately, a teacher told her to put her mask back on and physically repositioned her mask back over her nose. My daughter stated to the teacher that my daddy told me not to wear a mask outside and to talk to him. The teacher responded that she will talk to her mother and not to her father. My question to you all is, why are you allowing administrators and staff to enforce kids to wear a mask outside? It's not in policy, so what's the problem? I've seen many of you wear it outside, especially those attending the Super Bowl. So why my kids? I've noticed when I'm picking up my son from school that everyone, excluding my son, is wearing a mask outside. Again, why? Am I to conclude that select administrators know more about safety protocols than you? Okay. Or is the board negligent in executing their duty by visiting schools to ensure policy and safety protocols are being met? I have a solution, however. This will require guts, intestinal fortitude, and wisdom from 2 board members. Why not amend Administrative Rule ADD back to recommending that administration and students alike wear a mask indoors and, if they want to, outside? It's a sensible request because we know that mask along with the mRNA technology will protect those from contracting the COVID-19 virus. And since the majority of the administration, staff, and students alike will continue to follow these protocols anyway, what's to lose? Bring it back to recommending instead of requiring. But I know you won't do it. You know why? Because you fear that an unseen microscopic organism that is transmitted in a form of an aerosol will bypass all mask protection, because after all, as humans, we all require air. Worse yet, the virus will continuously escape the mRNA bioengineering technology spike protein, which will require quarterly shots, which will inevitably create havoc by warring against our own natural immune system. Or the reason why you won't do it is because it's Mr. Small's idea. And I am public enemy number 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, hoo-ha. Y'all remember that song? Anyway. In summary, public service always requires those that are holding office seek solutions that best benefit the interest of the constituency they represent, regardless of the source. As a constituent of Richland County School District 2, I have a unique and personal issue that needs to be addressed.
Mr. Smalls, your time is up, Mr. Smalls. Mr. Smalls, your time is up. Mr. Smalls, thank you very much. Next, I will have Mr. Chris Levy-Johnson.
Dr. King, in his letter from a Birmingham jail, declared, just as the prophets of the 8th century left their hometowns with their "Thus saith the Lord," and just as the Apostle Paul left his village Tarsus, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ, I too must answer the Macedonian call to aid. He says that the reason why he was in Birmingham was to answer that call to aid. We, the Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance of this community, the Gethsemane Baptist Association of this community, and the Midlands Baptist Association of this community, come tonight to bring that aid to this community. You all hear so many complaints, so much criticism, but you don't hear enough congratulations and enough adulation. You don't hear enough about how good you're doing. And for persons specifically like me who have children in this school and a wife who taught in this district, the wonderful job that you all are doing. And so we as a Christian community, we as a clerical community, just come to say thank you for the hard work that you are doing. We know that your staff is tired. We know that your staff has been berated. We know that your staff is agonizing. But I also want to let them know, please do not get weary in well-doing. Keep up the good job that you are doing. We believe that just like Jesus, that he too would believe in the tenet that our superintendent has, that he would be about diversity because he took 12 misfits and made them into a marching army. We believe that he would be about affirmation because he took those who were outcasts in society and brought him under their wing. We believe that he would be about equity, where he took 2 fish and 5 hush puppies and made sure that everyone got to eat the same amount. We believe that the tenets that Jesus had should be those that you all follow. Whether you're Christian or not, they're still good tenets. And we believe that there has to be, as others have noted, interesting enough, there has to be civility. There has to be people who get along. There has to be people who can talk one another and not cuss at one another and then come out here under the lights and act like they're higher than those. For I want you to know and remind you, not only does not God also see every sparrow, but God sees each one of us, and God knows all of our hearts. And every Judas will either commit suicide physically, spiritually, or politically. And so I pray, and we pray, as we become united behind you all through different services, through different programs, that you all put again the children of this district first at heart, so that we all might help them live out their God-given destiny. God bless you. May heaven continue to smile upon you.
Thank you. I actually skipped over Mr. Marty Stringer. Mr. Stringer.
Good evening, and it's certainly only appropriate that I follow my pastor. And I am here about and this will actually be a continuation of my pastor. I had no idea, but we shall see. I am here to have a continuation about show and tell, okay? Show and tell. Thanks. It is definitely an honor to address all of you, the honorables. It absolutely, and I feel great in saying that term, the honorables. The #1 school district in the USA, or shall we say the world? That's right, the world. As citizens, we are looking through our lens about what it really truly means to be #1 in education. We have stories to tell our fellow citizens. We have other districts that want to hear our stories. Lift them up. We have politicians who need to hear our story. We have corporations. We want everybody to know that Richland School District 2 is #1 in educational development for our children. So it's time to show and tell. Just like the great presentation that we recently had here of the young people and they're showing, every meeting, let's start with a big celebration. However, there are some things that we definitely need to cover in order to tell the world that we are #1. It's time to say that it's fun being #1. Now here we go. You open up every meeting with a number one cheer. Okay? And I didn't expect it to have a smile, but since I did, I said, well, we will have, and certainly that is left up to the honorables as to how we shall start it. But let's talk about that. Start every school board meeting with, we are number one cheer. Have the students from a school, young people, come in here and do their number one cheer. Everybody has a number one cheer. After the presentation, have the school of those students come and give their number one presentation of where they fit in Richland School District 1 being the best school district in the world. Then the staff, faculty, students, presentation. That's my time, y'all.
I apologize. Thank you. Your time is up. I appreciate the self-recognition. I promise I'm actually managing the meeting here. Your time is up. Thank you.
If my 3 minutes go? Thank you.
Bless you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. I love a self-reporter. Thank you. Next, if I can have Melissa McFadden.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It is past time to unmask our kids. We have been begging you to do just that for months. Free their beautiful faces. They deserve to breathe fresh air. They deserve to smile at their friends and teachers. Think of the joy you feel when you get a smile from a friend. You have taken their joy. That is what you have taken from them. It is so much more important than you know. Give them back their joy, something you never had the right to take away. We are the stakeholders, we are the parents, and we demand that you remove these ridiculous mask mandates. Madam Chairwoman, Dr. Davis, I'm calling for your resignation tonight. You have abused your power and you abused our children. We demand that you be replaced. Thank you.
All right, with that, it concludes public participation. We will next move on to our executive session items. Item 8.1. Actually, before we start that, I want to take a point of privilege to recognize the Honorable Representative Ivory Thigpen. Thank you for being here with us tonight. He's in the back of the room. Thank you. Item 8.1, Student Appeals, if I can please have a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
Thank you. And we're going to put these all together this evening. I move student number 1, deny the appeal. Student number 2, deny the appeal. Student number 3, Blythewood Academy. Student number 4, deny the appeal. And student number 5, deny the appeal.
If we can please verify once it comes up on the screen that that's accurate. Can I have a second? Second. Seconded by Ms. McFadden.
That is correct.
Okay, we have the motion and the second. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote at this time. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item 8.2, grievance. If I can please have a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we postpone, or actually, I move that we vote to postpone the grievance and grant a hearing.
Motion is made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
Yeah, I think it's important. The person that has placed the grievance has requested to speak in front of us. I think it's important to hear the story that he has to share and any additional information before we make a decision on the district's recommendation.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
we had a voluminous packet of information that I have poured through and did the work to read all of the information that was presented before us, and I'm prepared to make a decision regarding the same this evening as we planned.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mr. Vice Chair.
Dr. Scott.
Thank you. I am in agreement with Mrs. Agostini. I feel like anytime anyone is being accused of anything, I think it's just always the right thing to do to allow them to speak. Because sometimes when people speak, they may share things that may not be in the information given. And not only that, I've been on this board for 10 years, as they stated earlier. In 10 years, we've never had a community member want to do a grievance. So I don't think that's something that will begin to snowball, as well as teachers. In 10 years, we've only had about 7 or 8 teachers that wish to come before us for us to hear, and even their appeals were denied. So I just think when we say that we are elected officials and we have been voted in by the people, I think the right thing to do is to hear from the people who have voted you in, also to give everyone an opportunity. I don't think anyone sitting here or even out there don't feel that if something has happened to them, they would want someone to be able to hear them out too. So I just think when we're talking about being fair, we have to be fair all the way around. When someone has been mistreated, we need to hear them out. And then once we hear them, then we can make a decision whether we're going to support it or vote against it. Thank you.
Other comments from board members? I also wanted to say we had over 143 pages of documentation with details, statements taken, statements provided on all sides of the equation. And I think that the information there, being as voluminous as it is and the detail it is from the grievant and from other individuals, I too feel, as Ms. Mackey does, that I have the information necessary to make the decision tonight. But we have before us the motion. If we could please put that motion up on the screen. And it's been seconded by Dr. Scott. If there's no further discussion, we'll take the vote at this time. And the motion fails 3 yes, 4 no. If I can please have another motion.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to uphold the administration's recommendation to deny the grievance.
Motion's made by Ms. Mackey to uphold the administration's decision to deny the grievance. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Agostini.
Yes, I just want to state for the record, I'm truly disappointed that we didn't grant the grievance. And yes, in this package of 140 pieces of paper, one stuck out. and that would be the one that didn't,
Ms. Agostini, I would just
receive any consequences.
caution you before you say that we got that in executive session, but.
well,
if you-
there were stories that were inconsistent that were told. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manning, can I just
Ms.
remind
Mackey.
us that we are not allowed to discuss executive session items on the floor?
Thank you. Any other discussion? With no further discussion, we'll take the vote. Motion passes 4 yes, 3 no. There were no other items in executive session, so there's no need for item 8.3. We'll now move on to item 9.1, approval of the budget surplus. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, and to our community members that are here with us participating live and those who are viewing. We're asking for a recommended action to be taken by the board to amend the FY 21-22 general fund budget to include the following allocations: utilizing a portion of the general fund balance, $6.45 million, to give a one-time bonus of $1,000 net after taxes to all full-time permanent employees, and a one-time bonus of $500 net after taxes to all part-time employees. $10 million transfer from the general fund to the building fund to help offset future capital improvement needs that are typically funded through annual 8% debt limit borrowing. And you can find that motion in our board documents.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion on the table?
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey?
I move to amend the fiscal year 21-22 general fund budget to include the following allocations: utilizing a portion of the general fund balance, $6.45 million, to give a one-time bonus of $1,000 net after taxes to all full-time permanent employees, and a one-time bonus of $500 net after taxes to all part-time employees. $10 million transferred from the general fund to the building fund to help offset future capital improvements needs that are typically funded through annual 8% debt limit borrowing.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by, is that Dr. Scott? Seconded by Dr. Scott.
No, that's all.
Sorry, Dr. Holmes, you're on a delay. You're at a disadvantage. You're like in Jeopardy, you hit the button too late. So,
Sorry.
Dr. Scott got the second on that one. Any discussion from board members? I would just like to say I appreciate the, I don't want to, not only do we value the bonus to employees, but also the offset and the 8% debt. We're at a point where as we expend bond funds, and we appreciate the community allowing us to have the bond, that we've been able to expend those funds without increasing taxes because of the offset and the good use of our money. So Dr. Miley and Ms. Allen and the team have done a great job in helping to keep us on track so that we can continue to improve the safety and security, provide equity for our schools. And Dr. Davis, we did a great job with our budget last year of increasing our teacher pay to over $41,000. We've done a lot in this district, and we're able to do that without increasing taxes because of things like moving money into this fund to help offset other debt. So thank you all. With that, we'll take the vote. And the motion passes unanimously, 7-0. We'll now move on to item 10.1, Superintendent Highlights, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Manning, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, to our community. It is always a pleasure and an honor to share with you the superintendent highlights as they address and identify and, of course, highlight all the wonderful things that are taking place in Richland School District 2. Because of time, of course, I could not highlight every single thing that is taking place, so we have condensed it for the purpose of this meeting, but also for the purpose of sharing with our community so that you are fully aware of the wonderful things that are taking place in our district. So they are organized around our 4 core values: learning, character, community, and joy. And so let's begin the highlights, of course, with the cornerstone in Richland School District 2, and that is with learning. With the first recognition, I get to highlight Ridgeview High School and the Richland R2I2 Student Innovation Center all at once. Faith Aiken.
Tommy.
Dr. Holmes, can you go on mute unless you were intending to say something?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I was.
That's okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Dr.
That's
Davis.
okay.
Continue, please.
Faith Aiken is a senior at Ridgeview High School who takes specialized courses at the R2I2 Student Innovation Center. She has been selected as a 2022 national recipient of the Award for Aspirations in Computing. Faith is one of 400 students nationwide being recognized by the National Center for Women and Information Technology. She has demonstrated excellence in her STEM classes, earning career and technology education completer status for engineering at Ridgeview and taking 4 STEM classes at R2I2. She is also on the Ridgeview robotics team, was a student lead on the R2I2 Samsung Solve for Tomorrow team, and served as a student facilitator in last year's Students for Equity Education Summit hosted by Digital Promise. Faith was recognized in 2021 as the South Carolina affiliate of NCWIT regional winner for Aspirations in Computing. 10 Westwood High School computer science students earned level 1 of IC3 Digital Literacy Global Standard 6 certification last semester. This foundational certification in information technology was originally developed as the Internet and Computing Core certification, hence IC3, has undergone a number of transformations over the years. There are 3 levels of certification, each collectively assessing knowledge across 7 competency domains. Achieving industry standard certification makes students more marketable in career searches. And the students who earned level 1 are Jalen Evans, Jasmine Graham, Anthony Givens, Maya Jones, Emmanuel Parsons, Xavier Sneed, John Taylor, Sydney Thompson, Malachi Whitmore, and Caitlin Williams. Several students are currently working on the steps to certify at level 2 and level 3 and they are expected to complete them by the end of the year. The Anne Frank traveling exhibit is on display at Westwood High School. Teacher cadets at Westwood are hosting tours during the day throughout March 9th. A community event called An Evening of Hope is also scheduled for March 10th from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the school's auditorium. In the area of community, Richland 2 will close out Black History Month with a celebration of people who have made significant contributions to Black history and culture in our community. The district's Black History Month Honoree program takes place on Monday, February the 28th at 6 p.m. in the R2I2 Conference Center. The 2022 class of honorees are for arts and music: Kirsten Claiborne, choral director at Blythewood High School; Andre Delaney, songwriter and recording artist; Antonio Kenyon, media production coordinator for Richland 2. In the fields of education, we have Dr. Walter B. Curry Jr., founder of Renaissance Publication; Joseph Bias, the general counsel and special advisor to the president of Midlands Technical College; Dr. Derek Wise, South Carolina State University State Program Leader for Education, Innovation, and Support; Dr. Joseph Watson, retired Richland 2 administrator. In the fields of public service, we have Dr. George Ashford Jr., lead pastor at Journey Church; Tamika Isaac Devine, attorney and former City of Columbia council member, and Michael Tolliver, owner of Tolliver's Barbershop, and in the field of health, science, technology, math, and engineering. We have Ashley Edwards, co-founder of Iconic Sport Performance, Dr. Kimberly Mulligan, Assistant Dean for Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity at Auburn University College of Science and Mathematics, Dr. Henry Marion, retired physician, Lexington Medical Family Practice, Northeast, and Dr. Jason Williams, Assistant Professor of Pediatrics at Ohio State University and Pediatric Cardiologist at Nationwide Children's Hospital. The character portion of the report focuses on the 7 mindsets. Kelly Mill Med Pro Middle School is using the character education initiative called the 7 Mindsets. The 7 mindsets are: everything is possible, passions first, we are connected, 100% accountability, attitude of gratitude, live to give, and the time is now. Kelly Mill Med Pro infuses the 7 mindsets into its STEM M, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and medical club day schedule. Amaria Wilson, an 8th grader who is a member of the medical club, says what she enjoys most about STEM M Club Day is that it gives students the opportunity to find careers that interest them. She said it shows how different people with different skills can go into the medical field. Amaria says she is learning how everything is possible. And now for a little joy, the rookie teacher of the block. The first-year teacher, Victor Collins, is cooking his way into the hearts of many Spring Valley High School students. Since coming on board last summer, Mr. Collins, a culinary arts instructor, has already received 2 award recognitions. Faculty, staff, students, and parents at Spring Valley named him the Teacher of the Month for September 2021. Now he has been named the district's Rookie Teacher of the Block for February 2022. The Rookie Teacher Award is sponsored by H&R Block, a dedicated partner of Richland 2. Mr. Collins says, from day one, Spring Valley and Richland 2 have felt like home. He is a part of the district's Premier 100 initiative, which was created to broaden the diversity of male teachers of color in the classrooms. Richland 2 has the best basketball prospect in the nation for the class of 2023. And if you haven't seen this young man play, I would encourage you to do so. Ridgeview High School junior G.G. Jackson is ranked as the #1 basketball prospect for his class. Ranking service Rivals.com has placed the 5-star recruit who stands 6'10" at the top of its list of 150 players. He is averaging 22 points, 10.9 rebounds, 2.2 blocks per game this season, and has a plethora of college scholarship offers. I have my finger crossed for one school and one school only. The Westwood High School girls basketball team has the Region 4A Coach of the Year and Player of the Year. Coach Gregory Baldrick has led his team to 5 region championships in a row, and this is his 4th time being named Coach of the Year. Jessica Woods, another outstanding student athlete, if you hadn't seen her play, you should definitely make an opportunity to do so. A junior at Westwood High School is the Region 4 4A Player of the Year. Last week, she hit a major milestone, scoring her 1,000th career point. To end my highlights tonight, I want to make our students, employees, and parents aware that SCDHEC released updates to the school guidance regarding COVID-19. They just released some of these updates. As you may remember, the district announced last week that we are moving up our plans to meet with our local medical experts as a result of the updates. DHEC announced at that time, I am meeting with members of the Superintendent's Health Advisory Committee this week. In addition to the updated guidance from last week, we will review these latest changes with the group. We appreciate the patience of our students, employees, and parents while we determine the best course of action for Richland 2 in the coming days. We will endeavor to provide you all with an update as soon as possible after the meeting. thank you so much for allowing me to share these highlights with you at this time. Chair, I yield the
Thank you.
floor back
Thank you,
to
Dr. Davis. I just want to comment. Several of us went to the South Carolina School Boards Association, and you talked to other members and boards and other school districts and determine what's going on. And I think that the one thing we can all agree on is that when students find their passion, that they will succeed in life. And what I just heard was a long list of people, students and staff, that have found their passion and will be successful. And that's just, I know, the tip of the iceberg of what happens in our schools every day. Though, Dr. Davis, I must say, as much as I'm passionate about fantastic basketball players, I read an article today that CIOs, IT directors, are beginning to increase their salaries at the same rate as CEOs as IT moves more to the center of core of business. And so those students that got their IT certifications have a really bright future ahead of them as well. Look forward to seeing them be industry leaders in their own ways. I say that as an IT guy, so I'm a little biased. Anyways, if we can move on now to our report of the second quarter pupil services, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, we'll have Mr. Cleveland Smith, who will provide us with an update for the second quarter pupil services. Mr. Smith, and he is bringing some backup with him this time. Good for you, Mr. Smith. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Mr. Vice Chair, board members, Dr. Davis, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to give the second quarter pupil services report. But before I get started, I want to introduce to everyone and those that are viewing this evening our new Director of Pupil Services. We have with me Dr. Burnett Lau. She's here also this evening. And also I have our lead school counselor, take that back, our lead social worker, Ms. Abby Cobb.
Would you mind repeating her name? You turned away from the mic, so I couldn't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Our new director.
Dr. Burnett Lau.
Thank you very much. Sorry. I want to make sure we got that out there.
All right. The first slide I have this evening, I just want to give some highlights of this because you have this information in your packet. As we look at this information, I want to go ahead and bring to your attention level 1 infractions for the last 4 years. And with that, what I want to bring to your attention is that in our level 1 infractions, around 50% of those equal tardies and ID violations. So when you're looking at those numbers for each quarter, for each year, just to point out that a lot of that is ID and tardy violations. Another piece I want to bring out is in regards to level 2. As we look at level 2, we really see for the 21-22 school year, when you look at that information there, those numbers are, a matter of fact, the lowest of all the other years. So from 18-19, we started with 722, but we have been decreasing each year. So just wanted to do that as a highlight. And another highlight with this slide in particular, with our level 3, I wanted to break it down for you, especially for this year. You see what we have for the second quarter, 141 level 3 infractions. Of those, 10 of those were elementaries. And middle school, we had 57, and high school, we had 74 infractions there.
Mr. Cleveland, one point of order for
Sorry.
a second.
Dr. Scott.
Yes. If you don't mind, would you tell everyone what is a level 1, level 2, and level 3 infractions? Therefore, they'll be able to go along with like the numbers because they may not know what level 1, level 2, and level 3 means.
Be glad
If you don't mind, just quickly, you don't have to go into a whole lot of details,
Okay.
but just quickly kind of give them an update of level 1, 2, and
I
3.
will.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Level 1 infractions, those are like I mentioned before, like your TARDIS, ID violations. Those are the subjective ones. When we look at level 2, that's where we get into like fights, simple assaults, issues like that. And level 3, those are the ones that we code as criminal offenses, such as when you have a sexual violation, a forced sex violation, aggravated assault. Those are things that fall in that category, as well as weapons also fall under a level 3. The next slide here, this is showing over the last 4 years the number of students with suspensions and expulsions. And again, our data is really trending in the right direction. You see where the numbers for this year for expulsion for the second quarter, we have 15, which is a little higher than what we've had. But I want to go ahead and give some examples of what those 15 ended up being. Matter of fact, under those 15, we had 4 that were simple assaults. And we also had 2 aggravated assaults, 2 firearms, and we also had 1 threat in there. So those are some of the 15 that we had there. This next slide illustrates the number of fights. We've had some discussion about there are a lot of fights going on in the district, but when we look at this data here, yes, for the 21-22 school year, we've had 343 fights. But if you look at that first quarter, we had 181, and we need to remember that first quarter, that's when students were first coming back, because we got out in March of 2020, and students were out last year, so that number could contribute to students are coming back in, learning how to do school again. But with also, I would like to highlight with this year, we see where our numbers for second quarter actually decrease. So I want to go ahead and highlight that. Yes, we had 343, but we are trending down, trying to trend in the right direction. And some of that could be from the strategies that we have put in place. One strategy we have put in place is we have added additional administrative monitor at each of our high schools. I also want to share with you that even though we have added those positions to our high school, we've also done professional development for them. And there's another professional development coming up next week for those monitors that we have added. At the last time when I came to speak with you for the first quarter, Dr. Davis mentioned about beginning the discipline task force again. I wanted to let you know that on February the 11th, we met for the first time with our discipline focal group. It was internal, and we had a good meeting. It was a lot of rich discussion at that meeting. We looked at 3 areas we wanted to talk about: be proactive, responsive, and restorative. So we had opportunity to cover that. And the group that we had, there were many good ideas that came out of there, and we're looking at continuing with that. In addition, MTSS, we'll continue with that. I have on here that we're resuming the restorative practices training. We had to cut that out with the numbers of COVID going up so much for January and February. But in the spring, we are resuming that, as well as work that we've been doing with social emotional well-being and prime time. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Cobb.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back here with you. Again, my name is Abby Cobb, and I have the great privilege of being the lead social worker in Richland School District 2. And the information that's in this presentation and in your packets has been shared with you before, but just real quickly wanted to highlight a few of the things in reference to our multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS. As Cleveland Smith stated, we have resumed our restorative practices trainings. We've been doing that with 75 administrators, and we got all of our secondary, our middle, and our high school lead counselors trained in our restorative practices. We're continuing to do professional development for our new bus drivers, and I will just tell you, like this, it's amazing. It's so much fun. This last time I helped out with that training, and it was just really invigorating to see these individuals coming. They are eager to learn. They really want to know how they can build these relationships with their students and how they can respond to those behaviors on the buses. We're continuing to have our social emotional wellness leads, and we're piloting that at a few schools. And here's an example of a teacher who's using our social emotional wellness skills to help build those skills within their students. There's a CASEL standards that has your social emotional learning standards. And this particular teacher was using real world situations of physical aggression amongst students. And this teacher used her time to work with her students on how to really problem solve, how to figure out whether or not you should pursue getting into a physical altercation with somebody else. And so she used that CASEL standard of responsible decision making and helped her students to really identify the pros and the cons of how they work through that problem solving process. So I think it's just a really great example. Here you see the kids really being able to identify for themselves what a learning process that was for them and helping them to apply that problem-solving process in those real-world situations. And then we have our social emotional well-being. Again, I get really excited when I talk about this, but we've shared this information before. I'm so excited about the notice and co-regulation training. We did this at the beginning of the school year. We did it for teachers. We've been offering it at our NERMA, our Northeast Richland Ministerial Alliance group, and it was so well received that they asked us to come and do it to an even broader group. So the information that we're sharing with our staff is being so well received that community is asking for that same information. We also recently did a training for some of our LSS team members through ATIP, Acute Traumatic Incident Processing. And this training really helps an individual to come in after a crisis or an upsetting situation and really allows us to go in and try to regulate that person, help them calm down and de-escalate. And it's really going to have a much more long-term impact on them. So we're really excited that we were able to do that training, and we can respond back to the needs of our students and our staff in upsetting situations. We continue with our school counselors doing their ASCA training. And I'm a little biased, so I'm going to shout this out some more, but our Attendance Matters campaign continues to grow. We've identified who our lead attendants will be, and we've identified 2 out of the 3 interventionists, and they will be starting with us next year. And I just want to make a quick point to say sometimes people wonder, like, how is attendance tied to social emotional wellness? But attendance is the foundation of it all. If our kids aren't at school, we can't do all those wonderful things that we know to do and we're trained to do on a daily basis. So it really is essential, and attendance really does matter. We also wanted to spotlight quickly the Whole Child Survey. This was administered back in the fall, and we piloted it with a 4th, 6th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade. And it really helps us to gauge the social emotional wellness of our children. And we're continuing to get feedback from the schools who participated, and we're going to continue to identify and really move forward and learn from what those experiences were of how we're going to move forward with this. But as an example, we had a situation where we had a student who doesn't display externalizing behaviors. They are a wonderful student. We don't have any behavior concerns, and there weren't any academic concerns as well. But once the staff was looking at the Whole Child Survey, there was some concerning things that came out. And it prompted us to have a conversation to follow up with that student. And not only did that student need support from us at school, they really needed support outside of school as well. And the Whole Child really helped us to be able to identify that student that had we not had that information, they likely could have flied underneath our radar. So we're excited about that. We're going to continue to figure out what are our best steps moving forward. And lastly, just wanted to spotlight our prime time. We're continuing to do that 2 times a week, where we offer LSS Leadership holds time for our administrators and our LSS school teams to come online to share staff cases, seek consultation. It's going really well. As of right now, we'll continue to do that for the rest of the school year, and it's been a great support And we've been addressing a lot of challenges. A lot of people are coming on, talking about challenging student behavior, talking about attendance, just talking about a wide variety of things. And I think it really shows our staff's willingness to seek support and figure out what's the best thing to do for our students. At this time, is there any questions?
Board members, questions or comments? Ms. Mackey?
Mr. Smith, Ms. Cobb, and Dr. Lyle, thank you all for being here and providing fairly frequent updates of this information. I appreciate it. There's just so much to talk about. I appreciate the discipline focal group being rubbed up again. I know that was something a few years ago when we had committees that kept a spotlight on that. It was helpful, and I appreciate the re-implementation of that. Social emotional well-being, we just know how important that is, always, but particularly in a climate like this. I'm a huge fan, I think I've said before, of a multi-tiered support system. I appreciate that, and the things that come out of that. Professional development for bus drivers, I appreciate that. When we talk of education, we speak about teachers educating students, and that is absolutely fundamental. But as I always say, the end user of the product that we are all working together to advocate for is students. Students are the end user of that, and that starts with bus drivers many times at the beginning of the day, and they're oftentimes the last person that's seen at the end of the day. So I appreciate opportunities for that. ATIP, acute traumatic incident processing, awesome. I know that there is a focus on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and the things and that children bring with them to school from their home environments. But as we are also very aware, there are also traumatic things that happen currently that affect inside and outside the school, that affect their social, emotional well-being. So I appreciate that as well. I won't say everything I have written here, but I appreciate the report, and thank you for that data as well, Mr. Smith. And it's good to know that that we'll keep a spotlight on that we'll monitor that and see what needs to be done where we see extremes on either end. So thank you all.
Other board members? I'm sorry, is that Dr. Scott?
No,
Ms. McFadden, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Go ahead, Ms.
So
McFadden.
I do have a few questions. So when we're looking at the weapons that are being brought, everybody knows that this is what I wanted to talk about. I want to know how many guns have come through our school since this school year. How many guns have we recovered? And I will say this because there's been airsoft guns, include airsoft guns, but not those Nerf guns that we have found or something like that. But truly guns, and then also the knives that have come through. If we'll start there, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am. In your board brief, I provided you with the exact number of firearms that we have had on our campuses this year. That the number of incidents, and the number of incidents of that is 4.
4 incidents of actual guns.
Firearms, yes, ma'am.
Firearms. Okay, so I want to be clear that that is also including airsoft guns.
No, ma'am. That I'm talking about exactly, when I say firearms, I'm talking about guns, because the State Department codes firearms with one code, and they also code like BB guns, airsoft guns with another code. So I'm talking about exactly firearms are what we call as guns.
Okay, so how many BB guns, airsoft guns, those would be counted?
I didn't pull that data. I don't have that in front of me right now. I can, but those, I know it was asked about how many firearms, so that's why I pulled that
I
data.
understand. And this is not a Jeopardy thing or anything. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. This is because I want to know as a community member and a board member. And the reason for that is because airsoft guns look like guns. Now, whether we say that they can be loaded with bullets that can harm people, we do know that they can, shoot out something that can be damaging, but not as much as a bullet. So they do look just like a regular gun. My concern is making sure that they don't come into our schools at all. Now, I will say this. I was shocked because to me, it was just shocking. So one gun getting in is too many for me because it could be that one time. So when we're saying 4 firearms are able to get in, that's doubly shocking. And then to know that there's other things that look like guns that are able to come through our school. We are blessed that there hasn't been a Michigan situation. And I'm curious to know, one, do we know perhaps why, if there's a question for these students, why are you bringing this gun? Is it because we know about the Instagram fight pages? Are they bringing it because they're afraid and they feel like they need protection? Or is it, I want to show myself as I got a gun, I can get a hold of a gun, gang activity related, just to show around? Because let's be honest, if a child sees a gun, we do have a policy that they're supposed to tell. But let's be real, snitches get stitches. So we don't know what kind of atmosphere we're sending those children who tell back into, because it's reciprocating. And I just want to be truthful and be real about this, because we do know there are gangs in Columbia, but you can't pinpoint who's in a gang and which gang there is unless you're infiltrated into that. And we got to be careful. We need to stop the gun so we're not putting children in a position for retaliatory behavior. So I just want to make sure that the Instagram fight pages could be, students are coming in and saying, I need to take a weapon today. They done told me they're going to corner me in the bathroom. Every one of our high schools has an Instagram fight page. I have seen it, and it is atrocious to know that our kids go into these schools like this. And that is a big fear for a parent. I have 2 high schoolers and 2 about to go into high school in about 3 years. And I would like to address the situation in such a way that the way that we do, and I'm appreciative of everything with Cognia and K-12, but as proud as we are of that, we need to say we have no guns in our district, no weapons in our district. That's something to be proud of. And for me, because I do have children in school, that's a zero tolerance. So I would like to see how we could take steps to make sure that when a quarterly report comes out, there ain't no guns in our schools. There is no, fights. Okay, I understand what Mr. Manning is saying. They're going to fight, but it shouldn't be where they're getting together and hooking up fights. I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, if we can find avenues to say, boys want to get together and slap box in the bathroom. Okay, well, can we start a program where if they want to do something like that, that it's regulated in a safe environment instead of in a school bathroom where they can bust their head on the ceramic sink? And I'm saying that because there are avenues for mental health like karate that teaches you balance. It helps you protect yourself. It teaches you how to fight and to protect yourself. They have, Mr. Lance Adam has a boxing arena where he allows, come on guys, y'all know my dad used to box back in the day. That's just what boys do, but we can create a safe environment for them. So I'm asking if when we start looking into these funds for ESSER funds and we're looking for social and emotional well-being, that we look into other programs where we can help our guys be the men and that they are without sitting them down in a quiet room. I got boys, they're not trying to do that. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest. So if we can look into things to where we can say, 0 guns in our school.
Dr. Davis.
0 weapons. And that's just my point. Sorry.
I appreciate Mrs. McFadden's sentiments regarding guns and fights in school. And as superintendent, as a parent in the district, graduated 1 student and 2 are now currently in high school in the district, and who served as an administrator, assistant principal, and principal of schools in this district, as well as other school districts. It is an unfortunate fact that there will be fights in schools. I've been doing this as many other administrators in our district and here on this board who have served as administrators. I have not spent a year as an educator that there hasn't been a fight in a school.
Understand.
Unfortunately, I've not also probably spent a year where there have not been some sort of weapon brought into a school. And I think Mrs. McFadden's statement about we've been fortunate is indeed true. To be fortunate enough to not to have incidents happen such as that. There is a level of responsibility that we all share as relates to keeping guns out of schools. And whether you place a metal detector in a school or not, metal detectors don't keep guns out of schools. I think you shared the data. At this point, we've had 4. Last year, we had none because we weren't really in school.
Right.
The previous year, we had 3.
Right.
Of the previous full year of school, we had 3. And that's 3 too many, and 4 is 4 too many. The guns, if you bring weapons to school, a gun carries a 365-day expulsion. It is a bad decision for a student to bring a weapon to school, regardless of what the issue is. One of the things that's important, though, to remind ourselves as well as our community is this: we don't teach guns on the curriculum. There's not a course in our schools that talk about teaching guns. It's not something they're learning from school to bring weapons to school. We don't teach fighting on the curriculum. That's something that they're learning in the curriculum to come to school and fight. But we shoulder the burden and the responsibility of dealing with the actions of those students when they take place at schools. And so we do need to come up with some creative solutions to order to try to stifle that. One is the Be Smart program, which helps us bring awareness in the community that if you have a gun, that is your responsibility. You have some level of responsibility to secure that gun and check periodically if that gun is being secured. 2, as the Richland County Sheriff's Department has repeatedly told us, that the vast majority of guns that are being stolen are coming out of people's vehicles. Right. Because they are not locking the vehicles up, and so people are breaking into the vehicles and taking the guns out of the vehicles. So much so now that they're leaving other valuables. They're simply breaking into or going into unlocked cars looking for firearms. And that's a community issue that we have to be able to address. And then we follow that up when the students, of course, come to school. And if they bring those things to school. But I will say, and I want to just, it's not a pushback, but just as a statement, that I do want to applaud our students, because the vast number of guns and weapons or any type of incident is a result of the student telling the administrator that they heard something, that they saw something. And so our campaigns that we've been running for several years now, see something, say something, goes back 4 or 5 years in this district, is something that has rooted into our students. And so when they see a weapon or they see a student have something inappropriate, whether it's an aerosol, whether it's a water gun or toy gun or whatever, if the student shows it, those students are notifying an adult, whether it's the bus driver. We've had incidents where the bus driver's been notified, so by the time the kid gets to the school, there's someone in administration waiting on them, a student in the classroom. Every incident that I can think of is a result of that we have found is a result of someone telling. And so we want to continue to encourage our students that if they come forth and they share that information with us, not only are we going to take the steps to address this student who violated that policy, we're also going to take the steps to make sure that that student is taken care of, and we give them the safety and security they need in order to continuously encourage students to share. And they have done a wonderful job. We by no means are immune to fights at school. This is a national issue with these fight clubs, but it is a byproduct of social media. It is a byproduct of students who were gathering together to decide to fight. In 2012, I was a principal of a middle school in another district, and I had students who would go to meet in the bathroom to fight. But we weren't using video at that time where kids were recording those things. But sometimes when they do those things, it does allow us to now identify who was participating, and now we're able to address those behaviors when before we were unaware that those things were even taking place. And so, again, I think there are some solutions to that, but they're not going to be popular solutions. And I'm all for unpopular decisions that are right decisions, but we need to be prepared and braced for those types of things. Unpopular decisions might be limiting bathroom opportunities for students, but be prepared for pushback when you make that type of statement. Some unpopular decisions some other districts have made is zero tolerance for fights. Be prepared for community pushback when you say, if you get in a fight, it's regardless of what the situation is black and white, you are recommended for expulsion and you are expelled. We have worked really hard to reduce those numbers in our districts, particularly because they were disproportionately suspending students of color, disproportionately suspending boys, which was impacting their graduation rate. So that undoes all of that work. So we got to be very pragmatic and analytical in deciding what's the best next steps to take. And I think one of the final things that we've done thus far is re-engaging the discipline task force so that we can decide how to best address these things. But we do need to keep it on the radar. As Ms. McFadden said, it's something that we must continue to be watchful for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Dr. Davis, I agree with you. I mean, in the time I've been on the board, the word zero tolerance not that long ago was something that was thrown at us, and we talked about how it affected disproportionately students of color, boys, others. And so part of the reason we have this discipline task force, the reasons we've done the work we've done, is to try to undo some of those biases and issues. When we talk about metal detectors, we as a board, and Ms. McFadden, you weren't here at the time, but there's been discussion about there's a lot of logistics. Putting them there, who mans them? Is that 24/7? Is that, you can't just do it at the first entry into school and the exit, and there's lots of other entrances and exits that things can come in and out of. And then it does increase numbers as you find problems and you have to deal with that. So I think as we see more of these issues in social media, it is frightening to see it actually happen where we never got to see it happen before. But I'm also reminded when I look at these numbers, because we have done so much work to determine what level of infraction things are, how we address those issues, the wraparound services that we provide to students to decrease. What I see is a decrease in a lot of these issues when I look at level 2, level 3 offenses, the serious offenses. And when we look at it as a percentage of our whole school district, it is a very small percentage. Everyone does matter. I don't want to underestimate or undervalue those issues, but the vast majority, the far majority of our students are doing the right thing every day when they come into our schools. They're here to learn. They're here to get the school experience, and not to cause issues. So we do need to continue to monitor and adjust, and maybe we need to have some workshops or other discussions around school safety. I'm certainly open to doing that, having more work around that issue so that we can get everybody up to speed on where we are. But what I do want to be careful about is this idea of relaying to parents that your students are coming into an unsafe environment. I also have a daughter that attends school here, and I promise you, I feel 100% safe every day she leaves my car to go into Spring Valley High School. I feel that she's safe, and I think that that's the case with all of our students. We saw some numbers tonight on bullying, and the numbers are down. I mean, I hear these one-off cases. We had somebody come and speak tonight. But if people are unwilling to go to administration, we can't deal with those. So if they're bringing it to the board and saying, I don't feel safe, but I'm not willing to say who I am, then that's an issue we can't address. So we need you to come forward in those few instances. But we have done a lot of work, and I appreciate that. Thank you all very much for what you're doing. Keep up the good work, and we are going to move on to our next item. Next on our agenda is proposed policy revision for policy BEDI, news media services at board meetings. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, we'll have our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Marshalyn Franklin, who will come before you to share with you the revisions to this policy. Dr. Franklin.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Mr. Manning, members of the board, District Administration presents to you a draft revision to policy BEDI, news media services at board meetings. These revisions come as a result of conversation that took place at the board's winter retreat and then follow-up conversations by district leadership. District leadership has noted the space in the second paragraph. That was a formatting error when the document was printed and made as a PDF. We welcome your feedback.
All right, board members, do I have a motion?
This is first reading, Mr. Manning.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm corrected. Do we have a discussion? Any discussion on the items?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini?
Just a couple of points. First of all, the individual board members may speak to the media so long as they are not speaking on behalf of the board. When speaking as an individual, the board member will express such to the media, even if we say that to the media. If I tell the newspaper, if I tell this TV station, they can take the clip and put it on what they want. So, you know, I can be as clear as I want to be, and that still not make the TV or still not make the newspaper article that I'm speaking by myself or for myself individually. So I just want to point that out. And I would like to just see, I would like to make a motion that a period go after to include or continue to keep in when speaking as an individual, the board member will express such to the media, period. And I move that we remove and assumes personal legal responsibility for her media statement.
Okay, motion's been made by Mrs. Agostini. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey?
I actually am comfortable with the way it reads at right now. It is our responsibility to indicate that we're speaking on behalf of ourselves, and that will be on record somewhere. We all know that media plays the clips they want to play for the news, or they will print the sound bites they wish to print in the news media. Our limit of responsibility is ensuring that we have said that. Whether they print it or not is not, I feel comfortable with it standing as it is, so we have some sort of cushion there. I'm fine with the way it is.
Okay, Ms. Mackey, I just want to be clear that she's asking for a period after that statement. What she's asking to remove is the and assumes personal legal responsibility.
Yes,
So,
I'm
okay,
aware.
you're clear on that.
I'm
Okay, I
aware.
just want to be sure.
Thank you. Mhm.
All right, other board members, questions or comments?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Holmes?
I concur with Ms. Mackey. I think that needs to be there. I think that she is correct that when you make certain statements that could have potential liability associated with it, I think you should stand on what you say. So I think we need to leave that in.
Okay, other comments from board members? Dr. Caution Parker?
It speaks of accountability for people to accept the actions of their own behavior. It speaks of accountability. I agree it should stay in.
Other board members, questions or comments?
Mr. Manning,
Dr. Scott?
I just wanted to add, when it says assume personal legal responsibility for his or her media statement, does that also refer to if the chairwoman or chairman speaks on behalf of the board but has not had a conversation with the board as to what they should say? Am I reading that
Dr.
correctly
Scott,
as well?
I would think that the way that it's written there is
Uh-huh.
referring to any individual board member who has said, I'm speaking on my own behalf, and assumes legal responsibility, because those two are tied together. This says and.
So
I understand what she's asking, but I'm saying
Right.
it says when speaking as an individual, so it's referring to when you speak as an individual,
Mhm.
the board member will express such to the media and assumes personal. So in this case, it's referring to when individual board members speak. They have to say, I'm speaking on my own behalf, not on behalf of the board.
Right.
And at that time, they then assume legal responsibility for their statement.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
But Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Agostini.
I have a question, and my concern is it's not pertaining to the motion, but pertaining to this policy is, when can the board chair speak on behalf of the board? We have to have a discussion if they're speaking on behalf of the board, and it has to be voted on. I mean, if they're going to take a position, that's my concern of when the board chair has permission. I mean, if they go in and say it's a great day at Richland 2, that's fine. But if they go take a position on a policy that we haven't voted on, that's where my concern lies.
Ms. Agostini, I'm going to disagree with that. Having been board chair numerous times, there's often not time to call a meeting, give 24-hour notice, take a vote on exactly what the board chair will say on behalf of the board. If we were to hamstring the board chair in that way, it could, during issues such as 1,000-year flood, many other things that we've had and issues, it would tie the board's hand. I mean, I got up and spoke on behalf of the board when the individual came on the bus. There was no time. I was notified there was going to be a media, there would be press there, and that they wanted the board chair to come speak. As the board chair, I know the sentiment of the board on issues on gun violence and student safety and those sorts of things. So had I had to wait until we had a board vote, the board would not have been represented in representing the district. And so I disagree that that's something that needs to occur.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
My concern is if, for example, as we heard at our board meeting at our last meeting, our board chair sat up here and encouraged the community to stay woke. Is that something that we are supposed to condone as members of the board? Should they go out and do that publicly? That's speaking for the board?
Well, at the time she was speaking in board comments, which is us as individual board members. There are lots of comments that are made and have been lots of comments made from individual board members that don't represent the board during that time.
Well, I'm asking if that's acceptable, if she does that publicly.
When she did that, when she made that comment, it was acceptable because she was doing it as an individual board member.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Holmes?
I'm going to again reiterate that I do want our community to stay woke. Thank you.
Ms. Mackey?
Just as a point of clarification as well, Mr. Manning, as also having been a board chair, there are plenty of times when the board chair is asked to speak and less formal situations. They may have an event, a celebration, and the board chair is pulled aside to give comments in open media. So it's commonplace for the board chair to give comments often, either formally on stage to greeting people who are at an event, or informally. So it happens. It comes with the position oftentimes.
Correct. Other comments from the board? I'm actually going to agree with Ms. Agostini's comment to remove the personal legal responsibility. I think that can have unintended consequences depending on the issue. But if there's no further comment, we'll move forward with the vote on her recommendation or her motion in the second. Can we put that on the screen? Do you have that, Christine? Oh, you want to do a hand vote? Okay. Or well, we don't need to put it on the screen. Is everybody clear that it's to remove everything after? We'll express such to the media, period. Everything after that she's asking to remove. Is everybody clear on that motion? Yes? Okay. If we can have the vote, please, everyone in favor, raise your right hand. Everyone opposed? Any abstentions? Dr. Holmes?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay, motion passes 4 yes, 3 no. So that will be removed in the next revision. All right, other comments from board members on this policy? Thank you very much. We'll now move on to legislative updates or legislative issues. Ms. Roof.
Good evening again, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and board members, for the opportunity to bring you I'll make it quick, update on the legislative activity most recently. And as I've always do, I try to make an update to this report today because when I send it on Thursday, I'm basing it on the information I had at the time, and then I always get updates from summaries from different organizations on Friday. So I have updates. One, I totally somehow missed the fact that we have 2 education savings account bills in the State House. One was kind of moving, and then it stopped, and then all of a sudden this other one comes up. And it moved very quickly, like within 48 hours on the week of the 10th, it went from a subcommittee out to committee with amendments passed, and it was introduced on the House floor on the 15th of February, and debate was requested. So what they do typically is they will not start debate at that time. They wait and schedule it at a time when they can dedicate a certain amount of time to the debate. It's possible that that might start as early as tomorrow, the 23rd, but I haven't had a chance to check the House calendar. The Senate Bill S 935, again, another education savings account bill, has gone out now to full committee. I think last week's update did not have that added, and the full committee is scheduled to meet tomorrow. You may have heard, I think it was reported, that the House Education and Public Works Committee, the full committee, held their first public hearing on these bills that are related to curriculum and instruction. They held it on February 16th. I've included a link to the video there from the hearing. I will warn you that it is almost a 5-hour video. I think they had 26 people sign up to speak. They are still going to continue the public hearings. The next one is going to be on March the 1st. So no action taken on any of those bills, just still hearing public comment or public input on that. And these are updates of other education bills that are moving. Today, the full committee of the Education and Public Works approved with amendments House Bill 3242, which deals with providing information to parents about 2 alternative schools, and then H 3337, which is deals with enrolling military children before their family actually moves to the school district where they're coming to. And both of those have been passed on out of the full committee, so they should move to the House floor. Today, the Senate Committee on Labor, the Senate recalled the H 4766, which is Council for Workforce Development. They recalled it from the Committee on Labor, Commerce, and Industry and referred it to the Education Committee. I don't have any updates on the 3796. It's still in committee. Also, let's see, let me find my date. So the House passed Bill S-16, but with amendments, and just today, the Senate did not concur with those amendments. So S-16 will be headed to conference committee, just like S-203 is in conference, or will be going to conference committee. Both House and Senate have appointed their conference committee members to try to work out the differences between that bill, and then it'll go back to each body. The unencumbered time for teachers did pass the Senate. That's S-946. That's one we have talked about, and certainly is one that has been a topic for many years, especially at the elementary level, providing them that unencumbered time. Like I said, it passed the Senate last week and has been referred today to the Education and Public Works Committee in the House. And H 3590 is the bill that would allow some school districts to hire non-certified individuals to be teachers. It came out of committee, went to the Senate, but it has been contested by Senator Hutto, which most likely means that it will not receive any floor debate unless Senator Hutto approves that. And then we have some new bills, and they're both related to the election of the state superintendent. One is asking for a referendum that this election be nonpartisan, and then one is just saying that it should be nonpartisan, but those were just introduced last week. The budget is quickly moving into where it's going to be on the House floor soon, and there's a lot of information out there about the budget right now. Shelley Allen and Harry Miley have been reviewing information that has come regarding the restructuring of how public schools are funded. And we got that information last week, and it's quite detailed, and I'd say probably a little complicated. But Shelley Allen and I plan on getting together and including more information about that proposed changes to how education is funding in the next legislative update. And you see that this House is scheduled to start deliberations on the budget the week of March 14th through the 17th. And that I think, summarizes what has happened within the last 2 weeks, and including some of today.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? Ms.
Mr.
Mackey?
Vice Chair, not a question, but I just want to thank you. This is a lot of information to compile. There are a lot of moving parts. It's always helpful to get this report so that we know how to advocate and things that we want to share with our legislators. So thank you for providing this. It's a lot of work, I know. Bless
You're
you.
welcome. And again, I apologize for missing the two House bills related to education savings account. I don't know how that got past me. And just a reminder that the links to all the bills that I mentioned, if you open up the PDF document on Board Docs, it links you to the summary page on scstatehouse.gov.
All right, other questions or comments from board members?
Mr. Manning, I have one question.
Dr. Scott?
House Bill 3590 for non-certified teachers, is that process with teachers going through PACE programs or no?
No, it's very specific, and I can get more information for you because I don't know the details. It's not the PACE program, which is why some education organizations have concerns about it because it's out. We already have a process for individuals who are not certified to go through, and so, but no, it's different from the PACE program. And as I mentioned, it's contested right now in the Senate. So unless Senator Hutto gives his approval, it won't be debated until that happens.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
kind of, I wouldn't say dead, but we don't expect to see any activity on it, but we'll keep watching it.
Okay.
And if you'll click on the link there in the PDF document, it'll give you some more information about the bill. But if you have any other questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, board members, any other questions, comments? Thank you, Ms. Roof. We will next move on to draft agenda items for the March 8th, 2022 meeting. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, to our community members that are participating with us and online. We're scheduled to have a regular scheduled board meeting for March 8th, 2022. It is here at R2I2 with the call to order and a convening executive session beginning at 5:30. Our executive session items on this draft agenda is student appeals. At this time, that's the only item that we have. We'll come out of executive session where we begin with our inspirational moment, followed by the approval of the agenda. We'll ask for the approval of our consent agenda, followed by our very first public participation, and then we'll vote on executive session items, which will be the student appeals. There's unfinished business action requested, which will be the approval of revisions to policy BEDI, news media requests, news media service at board meetings, followed by new business action requested, where we're asking for the approval of the board meeting schedule for the 2022-2023 school year. This is followed by new business, no action requested, which includes the superintendent's highlights, a second quarter financial report, a legislative update, and then information regarding the 2023-2024 school year calendar, followed by our reviewing our draft agenda, ask for the March 22nd board meeting, asking for the approval of that draft agenda, our second public participation if it's needed, board and superintendent comments, executive session 2 if needed, voting on executive session 2 items if needed, and if not, we will go to adjournment.
All right, board members, questions, comments? All right, with that, we will move on to approval of that draft agenda. If I can please have a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the draft agenda items for March 8th, 2022 regular board meeting.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. We need to revote? Okay. Can we just do it by hand? Okay, let's take a hand vote. All in favor? Raise your right hand. Please raise them high. All opposed? Any abstentions?
Affirmative.
Dr. Holmes is in the affirmative. Motion passes 6-1. And we will now move on. Public participation. There's no need for the second public participation. Board and superintendent comments. I'm going to start with Mrs. Agostini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you, Ms. Mackey, for highlighting our students' talents this evening. They truly were inspirational. Congratulations to Dr. Scott for your 10 years of service, and thank you for that as well. A huge congratulations to all of our national board certified teachers. And finally, I'd love to end on a positive note, but just need to express my disappointment in our ability to hear the grievance of a member of the community, but more importantly, the board's inconsistent implementation of policy and just not being consistent when they implement it on one, and just the bias. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Scott.
Would like to thank the students from Richland Northeast High School. That was a wonderful presentation. So thank you for your time and your service and for just giving back not only to your school and community, but just coming to give back to the board to share a little bit of excitement and some smiles. Also want to say congratulations to the special recognition of our national board first time, as well as renewal teachers. So thank you for what you do and what you continue to do. And then thirdly, my glasses keep fogging up, so I'm gonna have to go back and forth. Want to, I think someone earlier came up and said they want to speak from the heart. And that's where I am right now after just listening to some of the public participation and just life itself. And also a conversation that I had with my husband just a few days ago. I shared with him that the world is in turmoil because we have taken prayer out of schools. And we both talked about the pros and the cons of that. I had some pros, and of course, he always challenges me, and he gave me some cons, and I truly understand that. But I was sharing about how much I truly appreciate that as a child, that we had prayer in school. And that means a whole lot, and would love to see something like that come back. But then it brought something to me, and some board members may have been to this workshop that we had with the School Board Association, or maybe they did not attend. But I remember one of the activities that they actually did, and what they did was they had us to check off things in our life, some things we may have been proud of, and some things we may not have been so proud of. But when we did that, they asked that we not place our names on that activity. And once we did that, they took the papers from everyone in this activity and they just randomly passed it out to other people so you wouldn't know who it was. So what they did was they said, if you have a paper and it's checked off with these categories, we want you to stand up. So they began to call out some different categories. And I'm just going to call out some different categories because I just want us to be mindful of what we say and what we do. So I'm going to call out the categories: affairs, stand up. And I'm not asking you guys to do that, but adultery, outside children, fraud, domestic violence, DUIs, if you've ever lied, cheated, stolen something, and the list can go on. And I'm sharing it with you because on another note, I'm going through Facebook and this shirt comes up and it says, half hood, half holy. I love that shirt. I actually purchased that shirt. So let me just tell you about the half hood part. I grew up in zip code 29203. Extremely proud of that. Grew up with a mother with an elementary education, as well as a grandmother who actually raised me. Was on welfare, food stamps, struggled during my childhood. And I'm so proud of that because your zip code does not define who you are or who you can become later. On another note, just with that half hood, half holy, in my household, we could cuss, we fuss, but we also pray. And I say that to say no one sin is any better or different than the next sin. Sin is sin. And he who cast the first stone. I want to talk about being perfect. I may not know scripture like some of you, but one thing I do know is life. And one thing I know about life is what goes around comes around. I have a few things here, and I'll be quick that I want to share. When we talked about earlier about the grievance and just teachers coming and wanting to share this out of the story, and I shared with you guys that being on the board for almost 10 years, only maybe 7 or 8 teachers have wanted to come and share their side of the story. It was denied. It was denied. I want you to think about if it was you or your child or your family or your friend, would you want us to deny you? Because one thing I want you to understand, it may not be you now, but it can be you later. The other thing I want you to understand is my grandmother always told me there are no big I's and little U's because we put our pants on the same way. Another thing I want you to understand is we need to stand up and stand tall for what is right. Be it a friend, family, co-worker, pastor, whatever. We must stand for what is right. And then I'm going to close with this. Oh, one thing before I close. I want people to know that their influence is never higher than God's power. Because when you begin to think that your influence is higher than God's power, you're treading on a thin line. And then I'll close with this. And it's a Bible verse from Matthew 7. It says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eyes and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Dr. Caution Parker.
Just want to say thank you again, Dr. Davis, for the highlights. I really enjoy hearing about the good things that are happening here in the district and the great things that our children are doing in this district. It was a great performance by our students from R&E, and I hope they can return again in the near future. They were wonderful. And I want to thank everyone for the reports, especially Pupil Services. Very good to see that and hear that. And congratulations to our board certified teachers that were recognized this evening. This past weekend, several of us on the board had the opportunity to attend a conference sponsored by the School Boards Association. Am I doing it right? Okay. Sponsored by the School Boards Association. And one session that I went to, I was impressed with everything. I haven't been to a conference like that was so informative and so down to earth and based in reality of what's happening in the world today as I was with this conference. And there was a mock board meeting. They called it a mock board meeting from Hades. And it was led by Ms. Helen McFadden, the widely known and respected parliamentarian consultant. She did a wonderful job. And some of the things shared throughout that session, Robert's Rules of Order, board chairs have 3 sources of authority to follow. The first one to follow is the South Carolina law, the second, school board policies, and last and third, Robert's Rules of Order. And it was shared with us that we didn't have to use I call it the big white book that we have, that everybody has, because there's a yellow one that is condensed, and it's pretty much focused only on school board issues and school board procedures that you need to follow. So I'm hoping, Dr. Davis, I haven't talked with you about that, but I certainly would like to see us get something like that. They also shared that your school board chair does not have to be
Proficient.
well, yeah, proficient. Very knowledgeable about Robert's Rules of Order. You just need somebody on the board that is, but it does not have to be the board chair, and that should not keep anyone from becoming board chair. So I wanted to share that as well. And of course, the chair is the person, after consulting with the superintendent, that will call a special called board meeting if needed. And just a lot of the responsibilities that a board chair has. And it just really was very interesting to find out all that information and to get some clarification. But the entire conference was great. The great guest speakers, and I'm gonna stop at this point because I'm gonna let some other folks who attended speak as well. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
Mr. Smith, thank you so much for the pupil services. I'm glad to get that information and all the detailed breakdown because it helps me to understand exactly where we are so that I don't get over hyper whenever I see something that might be alarming to me, because I can actually have a starting point to say, okay, this is where we are and this is the progress we have made and where we're coming from. So thank you so much for that. I wasn't expecting it so soon, honestly. I thought it was going to be a little bit of time. So when I seen it on there, it was surprising. So thank you for working swiftly with that. And I just want to say to everyone, I did go to the South Carolina School Board Association meeting as well, and I learned some things that were highlighted, and it's kind of like children. You'll have people telling a child the same thing over and over again. But sometimes it takes one person that can actually break through. And I want to give a shout out to Miss Gwen Hampton, because she pulled me to the side and she was telling me some things that, even though I've heard it from other people several times, it didn't click until she spoke to me and told me, gave me some information. So that helps me. And it also helps me understand how children are as well. So they may not get it with the science teacher in first grade or the science teacher in fifth grade, but if we keep going, they might find someone or something, an outlet that will help them do different things, because we all know that sometimes if you're not sure about something, it causes chaos. It might cause a mess. And so with children are the same way. So I just want to say thank you to the constituents who pay their taxes to allow me to go to that meeting and get professional development. And I want to say thank you to the board members. Look forward to moving forward. I think we had a pretty good meeting tonight. And so good night, everyone, and we'll see you back in about 2 weeks.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. In speaking from the heart, I do want to say one thing. With regard to consistency, I know that if it hurts people's feelings to hear certain things or for people to say things, it might be beneficial to be mindful of the things you say in the future. I know that I have been the victim of some heinous things that have been said from the podium and from people who are sitting behind these microphones. And I take it and I keep moving, and it doesn't adjust my behavior. So perhaps if it bothers people to hear certain things, and maybe they want to modify their behavior and the things they say in the future, and not pick and choose what offends you. And it's okay for you to be the offender. However, the South Carolina School Boards Association conference that we attended, a few of the board members, was simply phenomenal. I know that I never waste the money that is spent for us to attend these conferences. I always go to the conferences and I learn something. I come back having learned something, no matter what the conference is. This conference, I came back having been inspired, and I'll explain what that meant. One of the persons who spoke was Kyle Maynard, who is missing half of his arms and half of his legs. And he is the only person to have bear crawled to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro by himself. Well, not by himself, there are people in his group. His motto was focus on the 3 feet in front of you and keep going. We heard from Kelsey Tarnish, who was a nationally award-winning athlete before a brain tumor paralyzed the right side of her body and affected her speech. She is now a motivational speaker and talks about the positivity and the importance of keeping going. She said her parents believed that she had a chance, and so from that, she likes to share with other people that we all have a chance. Fill in the blank. We heard from student musicians from Richland 1, Spartanburg 5, Orangeburg Wilkinson, River Bluff, and Waccamaw. And all the speakers that we heard from, let me not forget our own, Dr. Helen Grant, who led one of the sessions. And actually, in the 8 years that I've been on the board, I can scarcely remember a time that a member of Richland 2 staff wasn't represented in some way. Richland 2 is at the cutting edge and the cusp of leadership in this state, and it's always a source of pride when one of our own gets to present at a conference like this. And I was fortunate enough to be able to moderate a session on removing the stress from the necessary tension between governance and administration. And the simple rule there was know your role and stick to it. Know what you're supposed to be doing and stick to it. Dr. Miley talks about finances when he comes up. Doesn't talk about student discipline. That is his role. He's an expert at that. And so one of the things we were told was to know your role, be proficient at it, and do it diligently. Some of the takeaways that the speakers shared, some of the speakers had overlapping sentiments this weekend. One of them was take a step back and remember why you do what you do. It was said in a personal context, but as advocates for education, we're all doing this for a reason. And so it's so helpful to take a step back and remember why we do what we do, and I'd say more specifically, for whom we do it. Whenever you remember why you do what you do, it makes it easier to get through the difficult days, as we heard from Amy Carter, who was the 2022 South Carolina Teacher of the Year from Chapin. So I'm thankful for the district, for SCSBA and the people who provide these opportunities. But when you send us to these conferences, it's just so important that we have takeaways and we learn better and do better when we come back to our own home district. So for everyone who took the time to come here tonight, bless you. I hope you get home safely. For everyone who has like a microphone or a laptop in front of you, it means you gotta be here. So thank you for showing up this evening, and you all be safe and enjoy your families and have a pleasant rest of your week. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes.
Yes, I would like to say thank you for our students that came to perform. That is a big push for us this year. We're so glad to see these students come in and do their thing. Thank you, Ms. Mackey, for setting that up. I appreciate you as always. Additionally, I'd like to say congratulations to our National Board certified teachers, our new ones and our renewed ones. And also, we did go to the school board conference this weekend, and one big takeaway from me there that I felt was keenly important was when Attorney Boykin spoke. Attorney Boykin spoke on the actual role of a board member, because sometimes there's been a lot of blurred lines these last few years. And he also talked about the importance of realizing that as a board member, you do not work for a particular sect of people. You work for an entire population. And there are certain things that you know as a board member that you should do and you should not do. I think that sometimes people in our public kind of confuse the lines as to what we are supposed to be doing as board members. And that's understandable because sometimes they don't know. But all board members have been to the classes now and know their role. So, for us to move forward and to continue in a positive manner, I think Ms. Mackey just said it, know your role and do your role. Let's stop with the trying to find finger pointing and things like that, because we're here for all of the children in the community. And that's what we're there for. So with that, I will say good night and you all have a blessed evening.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just again, shout outs to our students from Richland Northeast High School and PCA, just being premier world class. That is a phenomenal program. I know Mr. Sims is not here, and also the magnet director for PCA, but continue with the great work and preparing those students to reach their God-given ability through the performing arts. So I can't wait to see those types of things in our new Performing Arts Center when it's built. Congratulations to our new and renewed National Board Certified Teachers. Thank you for your commitment to continuous improvement and to being amongst the best in the nation as it relates to being, instruction. And so we appreciate you for being here and choosing Richland School District 2 as your district of choice. I also want to shout out to the board on approving the utilization of the surplus. I think it sends a great message to our community, to our employees as well, and the efforts that we've been making to not only recognize them and thank them for the work, the tireless work that they're doing. I know it's a small token, but a well-deserved token during this very difficult school year when it comes to dealing with the challenges of educating students in a global pandemic. And also thinking about those taxpayers as it relates to ensuring that we are setting aside funds that will reduce our need to spend 8% money, as well as address some of our capital improvement needs. So thank you for your for approving the administration's recommendation in those areas. I too had an opportunity to participate in a conference. I have been lucky and fortunate to be the superintendent of a school district where board members value the superintendent's professional growth and development. And so I am participating in the National Certification Program for School Superintendents, which is a highly competitive program and selection process to allow superintendents to receive year-round professional development for the course of 2 years. And a couple of takeaways, a couple of things that I just want to share with our school district and how the work that we are doing is resonating across the nation. And, sometimes, sometimes a prophet's not welcome in their own home. So sometimes the things that we do in our own community aren't necessarily highlighted and spotlighted and appreciated. But as I shared with you all before, I had a teacher one time that told me it was a sad toad that don't praise his own pond. So you have to praise your own pond the same way I praise the things in my home and in your home with your children and with your community, your churches, wherever. We have to praise the things and recognize all the successes that we have in our school district. But people ask me questions and want us to share or want me to share things on a national platform. I didn't necessarily speak to this on a national platform. I had a session that was on communications and use of social media and dealing with challenging situations in the pandemic. But other questions that came up about Richland School District 2 that people want to know. Talk to us, Baron, and they say things about your equity policy. You're one of the few school districts in the country that actually has a formal equity policy in place. Something continuously, I've said this over and over again, to be proud of. You're in the forefront of most districts nationally when it comes to actually having an equity policy in place in our school district while others are doing that. The Premier 100, of course, remains at the forefront of a lot of the work that we do because that is a national movement around the country. It's not about race, as I've seen and read and listened to in some statements in the community. It's a simple fact that about 53% of all public school children in this country are children of color. And about 80% of all public school educators are white. And we have to find some balance. And the only way that we do that is to try to recruit more teachers of color to the classroom. That's just a fact. It's not about race. It's about the fact that that's what we need in order to give our students a very diverse and broader perspective and an opportunity to interact with people that are not from, or that may have a different cultural experience than they have. That makes them a better citizen. But people want to know about the Premier 100 and Richland School District 2. People know about the Premier 100 and the conference that we are having coming up in March across the country. That's in San Francisco to Oregon to New York State, in the Midwest, in Missouri and Ohio. People know about the things the work that we're doing in the community. So I don't know if it's because of all the positive publicity we get or some of the negative publicity we get. Either way, it's publicity. And it's showing and demonstrating what you can and what can be done across the country. Done in one area can be replicated in another. Talk to us about your communications in crisis. They remember the NESPRA award that I want to give that. I say that I was recognized as the Bob Grossman's Communicator of the Year, but that is really a award that was for our entire communications division because they do a phenomenal job under Libby Ruth's leadership. That team does a phenomenal job of communicating under crisis and under pressure. How do you get a message out and keep people informed. So it does my heart good when people say, I know Miss Libby or Auntie Libby, because I know they're getting the communications. If they have their devices set up, they're getting them, but continuously communicating, not only just communications in written form, but also the way that we do our media, the way that we're able to share. People want to know and want to talk about that award and want to ask us, what do you all do? How do you have your structure set up? How many people are on your team? Who's tweeting for you? Who's doing your Facebook? They want to know what's going on in Richland, and they're asking at this conference. And another one that's not forgotten is the bond referendum. Passing a $486 million bond referendum, which is the largest bond referendum, I think of it, in a very long time, if not the largest in South Carolina. There are so many school districts across the country who struggle to pass bonds or what they call levies. And they all need certain percentages. It varies from different states. In some states, it's a 50% majority like here. Some places it's 60%. But they want to ask questions. What did y'all do? Who did you hire? What was your team like? How did you put that work? How did you put that team together? What was your practice? Where did you go? And these are the types of questions that's sitting there as the superintendent of this school district. And I say that with extreme pride because I've been a member of this district on 2 occasions. And I don't ever remember hearing any report about people coming to us about what we're doing. I remember us going to people, to Atlas Stevenson, to see how they're doing their programs when it comes to Late Start. I remember going to CAPS to see how they're doing their program in innovation. Now people are coming to us. And that can't happen without the proper people in the district and in this community putting forth the effort to make us premier. I told you, and I stand by these words. I said when I became superintendent that when they ask, how is it done? They will come to this school district to find out. I said that in 2016. When it's all said and done, when they want to know how innovation is done, when they want to know how teaching and learning is done, when they want to know how equity work is done, they're going to come to this district to find out. And that is coming to fruition each and every day. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity to continue to work with a phenomenal team that I have, to work with the board as you support the work that we do as a school district. I could care less who gets the credit for what. I could care less who gets the credit for as long as students get the credit. And we continue to highlight the work that students are doing, and we continue to highlight the work that teachers are doing. So I'll leave you all with this last sentiment. And that is, I had an opportunity, as I love to do, read to our students. I love that. It's one of the best parts of the job. Typically on Tuesdays before board meetings, I spend my entire Tuesday in schools. I need that to focus on what the work is. So I spend my days on Tuesdays of board meetings, traveling from class to class, visiting schools to schools. But I had an opportunity the week before last to have an opportunity to read to a class at Jackson Creek. And I read LeBron James's book, I Promise. And you all remember our I Promise statements that we made a couple years back. LeBron wrote a book called I Promise. And I read that book to the students. And at the end, I asked a question. Do you have the question? Do you have any questions for me? And one brave young man raised his hands and said, yeah, Dr. Davis, I have a question for you. What do you promise us? That was his question. 4th grader, Jackson Creek. What do you promise us? And every student stopped and turned around and listened. And I talked to him about what the promise was. And this is what I told him. This is what I wanted him and his classmates to understand, that I promise to help you be resolute in your pursuit of premier. That I promise to assist you as you strive to be relentless, unyielding, and unapologetic in your efforts to demonstrate consistent excellence in the practice of your core values, the applications of your principal practices, and the accomplishments of your goals. And in doing so, I promise to work to provide you and every child access to a premier educational experience. I promise to be courageous in addressing historical and present barriers that lead to inequity, inequality, and limits access to opportunity. I promise to do the work that I have been called to do. And I promise to be my authentic self. I promise to focus on the work by making the education and the well-being of all students the fundamental value of all decisions. I promise to support the principle of due process and protect the civil and human rights of all individuals. I promise to commit to serving others above myself. And I promise to remain resolute until my assignment is completed, and he who has assigned me has deemed that my assignment is over. That's my promise to that student, to every parent, and to this community, and to myself. I appreciate the time, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I want to make my comments about tension and failure. So those were some themes that were brought up in this last School Boards Association. See, tension is part of the process of a board and a board and administration. There is supposed to be tension, but there is supposed to also be civility in the discussion around that. I heard today one of my board members that just said, we need to stand up for what's right. See, the problem is everybody on this board is standing up for what they think is right. There's tension between what one believes is right and what another thinks is right. But just because I don't do what you think is right doesn't mean that you're wrong, or it doesn't mean I'm wrong. It means there's tension in how we go in the direction that we're going and the things that we're talking about. There's supposed to be tension, but there should be civility in the discussion and the process around that tension. That's the whole purpose of a school board and administration, is to purposely create that tension so that there's a balance between the elected body and between the administration that is in that role day to day. So that's the purpose. The other thing that I learned about, and it's interesting because the thing was brought up from Kyle Maynard, the individual that Ms. Mackey talked about that had no limbs, and from Kelsey Tainch, who also had a disability. And that was around failure. See, businesses fail every day. Failure is part of all of our lives. We fail at lots of things on a daily basis. And what I thought was interesting, and Ms. McFadden attended this session with me on virtual school in Horry County school system. See, we've forgotten all the great things we've done in this district, the leadership with one-to-one computing, the leadership. We've had IT conferences where we have all the school districts in the area that come to us to learn about how to implement technology and learning. We have lots of these things that we've done very well. Virtual school was one of the things that we were early on. We provided virtual education for students. But what I found interesting was in Horry County, their school board provided grace to the district. They found that their virtual program was not working, was not as effective as they would like it to be. So their school board allowed them to actually scratch this next year, their virtual education program, and has given them the resources and the time to start over from ground zero. And if you've ever attended conferences out in the business world, they talk about fail often, fail quickly. You don't want to sit in that failure, and you shouldn't fail every time. But see, we have some folks here that don't allow for grace in any kind of failure. We have to allow for grace for failure because that's how we get better, right? That's the fire to the iron. Spring Valley incident, we had a failure. But what came out of that is this district is a leader. We lead the way in relationships with our school resource officers. In the school district, we led the way, and we talked about behavior tonight in the discipline committee. We've led the way. Other districts come to us and ask us how we structure our discipline policies, how we have those tiered discipline policies, how we implement. That came out of that failure. It's okay to fail. We have to continue to get better, and we have to hold administration to the fire to get better. But there has to be some grace in that. And we have some folks that aren't understanding that right now. So, again, we've forgotten so many of the successes that we've had in this district where we have led the way where we're continuing to lead the way. And just understand it's not going to be 100% wins. Every now and again, we slip. But again, that's the tension. Everybody here, I believe, on this board is standing up for what's right. Every one of us. Again, it doesn't mean we'll agree, and it doesn't mean I'll always get my way, or that any of us will always get our way, or that the community will always get their way. But we're all doing what we think is right. So I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate this board meeting, that we had a great board meeting today. I want to thank everyone for their role in that. And thank administration for the work they're doing, our teachers and staff. Thank you to the community for your input. Again, regardless of whether we're on the same page or not, I still value the opportunity to hear another side of the story so that I can get better and grow and learn. And with that, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor, raise your right hand. Raise them high. All opposed? Was that, please say whether you're for it or against. Dr. Holmes? Are you for or against, Dr. Holmes?
I think
She left? Okay, 7-0, motion, meeting's adjourned.